Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're in the world. This is Julian Salabri from Basel in Switzerland, home to Galen Growth, of course, Roche, Novartis, and the Life Science Center of Europe. Welcome to the Galen Growth Cohort Summit 2021, Galen Growth's annual social responsibility program dedicated to scaling digital health ventures across the world. Through this program, startups engage with Galen Growth's unmatched network of corporates and investor decision makers to increase your visibility in the digital health community and build relationships to reach our common goal of solving the pain points in the patient journey. We grow the ecosystem together. It is a unique program with no fees, no equity taken, as we collaborate together to push innovation further. Today, I'm joined by three very promising digital health ventures, all members of the program. On my list of panelists, I have Rob Royea, who is the CEO and chairman of Cyrcadia Asia, and full marks to Rob, who's calling in way past midnight on the West Coast. We have Kevin, the CEO of Medi, and last but not least, we have Stine, Mølgaard, Sørensen, who's the co-founder and COO of Radiobotics. I'm Julian Salabri, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Galen Growth. Galen Growth is the global leader in digital health, private market data analytics, and matchmaking to industry and to investors. First of all, a little bit about my panelist companies. Cyrcadia Asia, better known for its core product, the IT Bra, is a wearable that detects breast cancer even at the earliest stages. It's an intelligent insert that's worn comfortably under any garment. It tracks circadian temperature changes in tissue that indicates breast cancer. Some key stats: it was founded in 2017 in Hong Kong, and I'm talking about Cyrcadia Asia and here, not the Cyrcadia as a broader company. It's a B2C model, although we can come back to that, Rob, because I think that's probably not 100% correct. We at Galen Growth will categorize you as a diagnosis tool. You're a pre-Series A business. In the HealthTech Alpha, which is a Galen Growth tool, we give this Cyrcadia Asia an alpha score, or a maturity score of 52, which is actually a good score for a company of maturity and achievements to date. And then we have Medi, describes itself as founded to develop an artificial intelligence that enables to look through the whole body health using an eye as a window. We'll find out more about that in a minute. Some key stats: founded in 2016 in South Korea. It's a B2B model. We categorize Medi as medical imaging. It's again a pre-Series A business and carries an alpha score of 48.5. So as you can see, we're roughly speaking the same ballpark figure in terms of our cohort members. And then Radiobotics, which describes itself as challenging the status quo of musculoskeletal radiology, increasing throughput by automating routine tasks whilst improving diagnostic quality. Again, some key stats for you. It was founded in 2017 in Denmark. It is a B2B model. We categorize it as medical imaging. It's a pre-Series A business and has an alpha score of 52. So as you can see, again, in the same ballpark figure. So just to remind our audience that we are gathered today to discuss discovering the tech side in digital health innovations. Our synopsis was set out as healthcare is transforming right in front of our very eyes with advances happening in technologies, including artificial medical intelligence, or AMI, federated learning, virtual reality, and vital screening, challenging the status quo. Of course, that's a list. It's not an exhaustive list, and we'll find out a lot more from our panelists. Let's explore some of these technologies that our ventures are building and how they're presenting the real digital transformation opportunities for the healthcare industry. So let's start with the first question, if I may. I'm going to start with you, Stine. If I look at what you are building in Radiobotics, can you give us a flavor of what technologies your venture is busy pioneering and how you're leveraging these to transform healthcare?
Well, yeah, that's indeed a good question, Julian, and thank you for the introduction. So, I mean, when you start a health tech startup, I mean, you always start with building from what there is, and you use open source, and you try to use open data sets, and you try to use those things that are already there to see if you can have something that in some way can fly. And we are 3.5 years old by now. So we have had the time to build our own proprietary technology with both having our own libraries and also having our own methodologies. And it's also now that we're starting filing for patents. So when you are reaching that stage, you can really also confidently say that you have something that you envision to be relatively new and visionary, so to say. So really what we are looking into and what is interesting for us is obviously how well and how fast and precise can we detect abnormalities in pixels or medical images, right? So that is computer vision, it is machine learning that we're really looking into, depending on how we're gonna look at the problem, so to say. And really what I can see and what you also see in the space is actually the access to the data. So one thing is that we believe that our technology is proprietary by now because we had the time to develop it and to protect it. But also I can see that the access to data sources is really something that makes a huge difference, because I can see my competitors, when they're publishing studies on the performance of the technology, they've also trained at the same open source libraries that we have used. And when you have your own data sets and you have your own partnerships, I really think that you have something that you can prove. It can differentiate. And then it comes down to small technicalities of how well it's performing and those things. And every tech startup would tell that their technology is the most advanced and the best in the world. But I really think it comes down to sort of the data source that you have. And also something that's discussed widely is the diversity of the data source, right? So I really think that that's what also can differentiate from how well you're doing it, but also have a business value point later at a later stage as well.
So how are you achieving that diversity of data then in order to differentiate your solution?
So for instance, you will need to have good collaborations with the hospitals, because those are the ones, at least in a European context, owning the data. And the agreements that I have is giving me access to train on the data. So I do not own the data, but I own the access. And there you can have some quite good relationships and deals that nobody else can have. So for instance, I have a great agreement with the Danish hospital system, giving me access to more than 50,000 patient cases, including all the images. You have to be a Danish company and you have to be all of these things in order to get a hold of these. So I believe that is something that differentiates us. We also have a partnership with one of US largest teleradiology companies, and they're receiving data from all over the US, which also brings a quite diversified data set and a huge amount of data as well. So we've seen instances on that an FDA cleared product only was trained on a local hospital, but then when they were trying to implement it in clinics across the US, it did not perform very well. So we are also very proud that we can say we have data from across the entire country of the US. So I think it's those kind of initiatives and partnerships that enables your technology to be really good, but also ensure that you can develop fast in your product pipeline, right?
Absolutely. Let me switch to Kevin with the same question, Kevin. So can you give us really some good insights as to what are the technologies that you are pioneering within Medi and how are you leveraging those to transform healthcare?
Yeah, so hello, I'm Kevin Choi, CEO of Medi, and we are offering the retinal AI biomarker for cardiovascular, chronic kidney disease, or other metabolic diseases. So yeah, I would like to introduce our vision and mission. Our vision is prevent the diseases before the symptoms. As I own I'm the very young, too young glaucoma, severe glaucoma patients, and yeah, unfortunately, I have some vision vision disability in my right eye, and yeah, it shouldn't happen to this too young age, 25. So 25 is the first age I was diagnosed with glaucoma. So yeah, I'm quite frustrated about these diseases, and yeah, this is the irreversible changes. So I cannot recover my vision. But yeah, I also would like to help the other people who have the similar problem of me. And there is the other more critical and more the life-threatening diseases is the cardiovascular disease or atherosclerosis changes. This is also irreversible and yeah, make human die. So yeah, we think that symptom is too late. So prevent the diseases before the symptom is very important. So we try to find these diseases symptoms, very tiny changes, but very clear changes, clear some problems, what happened in the blood vessels, atherosclerosis. We would like to catch these diseases through the AI. So our mission is also the eye is the window of one's health, and this is also an idea of the other co-founder, the retina specialist and AI expertise. So yeah, he truly believed that eye could be the window of the health, and as eye is the only organ we could directly see the blood vessels without the invasive way. So yeah, we could do that. We could use this retina as a AI biomarker, the novel biomarker for precision medicine, because the changes, including reflecting the lifestyle or some inherent risk for the atherosclerosis or circulatory problems, and then yeah, these changes make the very tiny traces and problems in the eye, in the retina side. And our AI, human cannot detect it, but our AI could detect these small changes and yeah, could calculate the risk of the own risk. I mean the personalized risk for metabolic diseases. So as the chronic disease is lifelong diseases, yeah, chronic diseases are lifelong diseases. So the early intervention and prevent or some manage it is very important in this personalized medicine area. So yeah, our item could help this area. Yeah.
And so the technology you're leveraging is obviously imaging. Are you working similarly to what Stine was describing, which is a lot of machine learning and therefore a lot of data to enable your machine learning, I guess, product to become smarter?
Yeah, so our product is a software as a medical device. So our AI calculate the risk from the retinal imaging, the fundus photos. Yeah, there are many fundus camera producers, and this is the very general test in the ophthalmology area and also the optometry area. But the problem is metabolic diseases, usually metabolic comorbidity, including this retinal problem. And then, yeah, there's a workflow for metabolic patients to take a fundus photos. So yeah, this is very easy to install, or I mean the market fit, clinical fit model for the metabolic patients.
Interesting, because I guess some of our investors and corporations listening to us during the summit will obviously think about Google, who have advertised the fact that they have explored this particular science. I know of at least two, if not three ventures in China that are doing something similar and have certainly, as China is usually the case, recorded an enormous number of patients on their platform. So how are you differentiating yourself from those value propositions?
Yeah, thanks for a great question. Yeah, so eyes, the window for humans' health is not the origin idea for us. This is also a very general idea for ophthalmologists or even the cardiologist area. So, and then Google presented very amazing research in 2019. And then yeah, that paper showed the potentials. We could predict the cardiovascular changes from the eyes. And then yeah, we could predict the age, gender, or HbA1c, the diabetic mellitus score, or even the smoking level from the eyes. This is a very amazing evidence. But the problem is, and then how could we do with this result from the AI? So the important thing is to predict the actual cardiovascular risk event. So I mean the risk of the cardiovascular event. So this is a very important idea, very important concept in the cardiovascular risk assessment area. So we are using the very, very unique data set in Korea, including the eye, cardiac CT, and other blood markers in a single day. This is a very unique data because there is a very popular checkup in Korea. This is kind of some culture. And then, yeah, we are using this data set and we successfully could predict the cardiovascular event risk very accurately with a comparable accuracy with a cardiac CT scan, which is a golden standard now. And we could also publish this evidence in the Lancet Digital Health. And then, yeah, the unique data set and very, very improved evidence is our differentiation point.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That helps to understand a bit better. Rob, let me switch to you. It's different, but it's something that I've been a bit more familiar with for a little longer. Tell us, what is the IDBRA and what technologies are you leveraging to really bring something quite extraordinary and new to the market?
Thanks, Julian, and appreciate the audience for your group as well. As you probably know, breast cancer is the #1 cancer in the world for women. Unfortunately, women have close to 50% of all the cancers in the world, but they also get all the cancers that men do. So when we look at breast cancer, it is a critical issue as to saying, how in the world do we get to a screening capability earlier versus what we're getting now, which is many cases late stage diagnosis. What this technology does for Cyrcadia is that we have a wearable insert that goes under a person's current garment under the bra, sits specifically on the body, and it can be the monthly smart breast exam, if you will, that communicates into a very intelligent database. Now, that being said, what we have to do is leverage the ability of understanding what is accuracy, right? We know that in the case specifically in density, for instance, in mammography, that density challenges the accuracy of an image itself. Same thing with ultrasound, a little bit better in some ways, but still challenged if we try to use that as the actual indication of truth. So our back end of our technology is all based upon machine learning, now over a decade of work, which originated out of 5 years specifically in Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, your backyard, as you've spent quite a bit of time there. And that technology then is compared to the actual case of pathology. It's as close as we can get to the factor of truth, being 98% or 99% accurate, depending upon what we're doing in the area of the quality of the pathology. That being said, it is not for the faint of heart to step into a technology like this. If you look at mammography, the FDA has cautioned heavily about using screening of mammography for dense tissue. Over 60% of the population in Asia and over 40 to 50% in Europe and the US have density. Ultrasound has the same issue. There's also a temperature sensing technology called thermography that's also been cautioned by the FDA. Each one of these technologies has tried to get to a screening algorithm capability, but based upon the factor of truth of just doing imaging, none of them have been able to make it happen. So now we are close to 500 cases, over 200 in the US and over 200 now in Asia and accelerating. So that against the actual case of pathology, and it takes years to do this because women literally have to have a biopsy and then they have to say we're allowed to be able to access that tissue to say how accurate we are. So at the end of the day, our technology is a smart, simple breast exam where a woman can get a communication directly through her smartphone to either the physician or even the insurance companies, which have a great deal of interest in this, to say if in fact we can find cancers earlier. We know that the survival rate is over 98% if in fact we do find breast cancers earlier, and the cost of actually servicing that patient is drastically reduced.
Yeah, and a number of challenges, and it's interesting because, of course, the world of innovation, everyone continues to focus on the successes and the success stories, and in healthcare, we tend to overlook the number of challenges facing the headwinds facing you, and as easy as regulators, as you just pointed out, of course, to demonstrating clinical effectiveness, and of course, you get all the other issues around patient adoption, healthcare professional adoption, etc. So let's focus on that for a minute, if I may. Stine, let's switch back to you here. In your efforts as a company to really prove product market fit, and essentially being able to go to market with it, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've been facing or currently face, and then how are you addressing these?
Well, I mean, proving product market fit is the essence of all startups and companies. And I'm not sure that I can claim that I have done this already. And it is a work in progress thing. I mean, the biggest challenge that we have is obviously trying to introduce new technology to a market that doesn't necessarily wish to be challenged by technology. For doctors, very rarely like to be challenged in what they do, to an IT system that's not necessarily ready for new technology. And then we're also facing that it doesn't exist yet. So we can see our competitors and all other imaging companies is still at an early stage in terms of showing real revenue. And that is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And that is obviously the opportunity we're tapping into by looking at the forecasts, see how other companies are doing, and really trying to be a little bit different, and also try to go in the stream of these companies. So I really think it is a true challenge, because the market is not really there, but it's projected to become very large in 2 to 3 years. And obviously that is what most startups they do. They are built on an opportunity to be ready when the market needs it, right? So that's the first thing. The other thing is that we're obviously trying to do a lot of initiatives in order to listen to the feedback that we get when we do the pilots and the installations, and then we also have our first commercial deals. But it's not that they're gonna. I mean, I'm not at a point where I will break even very soon. So it is to learn from those smaller activities. We've done some research in the US. We're still awaiting our FDA clearance, but we've done some research in the US where we looked into 2 things, and that's really the recommendation that I have to others is look into what is the biggest problem you're solving and what is the willingness to pay in your target groups. So we have interviewed orthopedics and radiologists, figuring out where's the pain, can we solve it with the technology we have, and what is the willingness to pay for this. And that's what we have done a lot of work by establishing, so we feel confident that when the demand is there and when everybody's ready for it, we can deliver those things.
Fantastic. Yeah, some pretty severe headwinds. It'd be interesting to get what is your one top tip then for any team of engineers or medical professionals that think they've got a bright idea that's going to be enabled by AI and data and other technologies?
Well, I guess it's speaking to the customers, right? I mean, that is in all businesses, whatever you're building or doing, it is understanding the needs of the customers. Because I can see, if you take the components, what does it take to build a health tech startup? You need the data, you need the algorithms, and then you need to work with the hospitals. And I think the last part is the most difficult thing to do, is to really understand. But also you have not to take everything they say as how I say, the truth, because they don't know it either, because they haven't worked with this technology before, right? So you have to take some of the feedback and you have to go back with your engineers to try to figure out how would you do it then, because we get a lot of ideas and input from our peers, and sometimes they're just looking at their one little world and being, I always miss this thing, so could you build an algorithm that could fix this? But that doesn't mean there is a business case for it, right?
True. Very true.
So that is really what I think is, you have to speak to them, but you have to know yourself also what you're doing, and create the business case yourself as well.
No, spot on. Thanks for that. Kevin, so what have been some of your challenges then in formulating a product that actually will be not accepted as such, but certainly will be of strong interest by medical professionals, for example?
Yeah, I'm quite agree with her, but I would like to raise up the other issue.
Please, yeah.
As modern medicine modern medicine's basis is evidence-based medicine, so evidence is very important thing in the clinical side. So I think that the funny thing is, usually the company could use AI when AI is good, but physicians only could use AI when it is enoughly validated. So evidence is very important. So the medical industry is really regulated industry, but on the other hand, it should be, of course, because this is very important. This is strongly linked with the humans being. So we have some challenges to collect the real world evidence, because we actually did some risk assessment. We do risk assessment things, and then we should follow up the patients over 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then the prospective clinical trials is very challenging for us. But fortunately, we could collect some retrospective cohort data set, including the many cardiovascular or other some the diseases event. So this is what we done before, but from now on, we should also find some real world evidence in the real clinical setting, or some feedback from the physicians and also the patients. I mean, the physician's preference or patient's preference. So this is a very important but challenging thing for us.
Thanks, Kevin. Rob, I'm going to tweak the question slightly for you, if I may, because of your Asia Pac wide as well as US wide experience. What has, but all three of you mentioned data being fundamental to, I guess, producing the insight that will be of benefit to the healthcare professional. But what we're noticing on the data front is a gradual, let's say, nationalistic approach to the regulations that sit around data. And of course, probably no one's missed the fact that China is becoming certainly more vocal around data privacy laws. But the Europeans with GDPR have been very, very clear for a number of years now. So how do you, in view of the fact that it's really an important, data is so important and these regulations are shifting, how much has that been a pain so far, or a challenge so far, and how do you see that over the next few years? I know I'm asking you to get your crystal ball out, but I think it's an interesting question.
Well, I think it's a phenomenal question, because when we start looking at the advance of what we can do for AI learning, and we look at the requirements in the US for privatization and making sure that we have anonymous data, but then we can be within a regional environment and have this plethora of information that can be accessed in areas of China. The ability to say what country is going to be leading this race, we're starting to see an acceleration of some of these countries that understand the ability to use the data across a number of levels of plateaus. So it's more difficult for countries that are really privatized to say, how are we going to get a regionalization? From our perspective, it's also been difficult because the way that tissue is treated, for instance, in pathology, it's treated differently in some countries than others, because in some countries, it's better just to make the decision and go, versus other ones, if you do that, you might get sued, right? So there's also the regionalization of the legal implication of what you're doing. From our perspective, what we needed to do is to get as large of a database as absolutely possible so that we can say we've got a global database that is accurate in not just Asia or in US, but also in Europe. And how does that actually come into play then for the commercialization side? For us, it's really critical that we have the physician backing. They understand that the access to the technology is accurate. And that is only when, to your question, when we first started, Julian, of B2B versus B2C, we go B2B first. We make sure that what we're doing today, the physicians clearly understand it. And then once we have that platform, which we now are doing and starting to look for launch in the next 12 months, that then will lead us into the B2C, where they will prefer to have a physician referring back to the consumer to say, please start using this technology. Give me some feedback on a monthly basis or as early as possible. Come into our clinics or our hospitals and ensure that we are helping to solve your case as early as we can. And that's what we really see as the power of the technology and the power of AI, but it is going to be an interesting race from country to country.
Oh, absolutely, Rob. And I think, you've just demonstrated the complexity of any digital venture strategy, particularly as they look at various markets beyond the one they've actually born in and focused on. Stine, you mentioned this briefly, but Rob certainly reasserted the conversation, which is the business model. You mentioned it in terms of talking to the customer and figuring out which way you go, rather than just doing something that sounds fancy for the purposes of one HCP. So what is your company's business model, and why did you define it that way?
So our business model is a SaaS model like many others. And we are sort of looking into charging per scan or as a license fee. And that really depends a little bit on the customer, because building software like this, it doesn't really make such a big deal for us whether it's one or the other. What we're really looking into is where you have a high volume. So when we're trying to filter for what will be the ideal customer, like the customer profile is what because you have to focus your time, right? So we're really looking into where do you have the highest volume of images, right? And that is also where we can then charge more, of course, but also showing that we really bring value, because it is in the volume, it is a volume game, so to say. And whether they prefer paying per image, because then they can maybe control it more, or have it as a fixed license fee, it doesn't really matter for us as much as it would matter to have a customer, right? So we try really to be flexible. But one thing that I could think of that is interesting is really trying to sort of disrupt that a little, because I think it's very common that tech startups, introduce the SaaS model, and that I don't think that's very revolutionary at this stage. But what could be interesting is to look a little bit towards the consumer technology and how they charge for a monthly fee or subscription based. And I really think that could be interesting when working with hospitals, that you have a monthly subscription based on maybe of the amount of images that you have, that is much more flexible and much more speaks to you, that you take this technology and you use it when you really need it. And because hospitals are very used to these enterprise contracts where you sort of negotiate for 5 to 10 years of doing something. And I would like to also then, the SaaS model is already disruptive in that regard, but I also really like to see if we can get away with even having a subscription-based model, right?
Interesting. I see a number of parallels with the Gale and Growth business model, but anyway, we'll get into that today. Kevin, your business model is B2B as well, I believe. So why have you picked that model, and how does it work?
Yeah, so I think that every AI company would like to prefer the use-based, some pay-per-use model, because this is the ideal model for every software company, especially for AI. Yeah, but I think that at least in Korea, or at least in some countries, what we met before, they are not ready to 100% accept this model, this fee model. So yeah, we choose the subscription pricing model based on the uses. So just make the estimation for the uses and charge and fix it after the using. Observing the uses in a month, monthly or yearly. So the important thing is software AI. Every time it is advancing and is getting better, but it never go broken or go to stop when electronic enoughly supported. And then so I think that this is quite a acceptable model for our customers and also for us, because we charge based on the usage. But ideally we should every AI company try to move it to the pay-per-use fee, I think.
Okay, thank you. There's a certain commonality there. Rob, I may have miscategorized you at the beginning by referring to you as a B2C model, but is that because you've pivoted to B2B from B2C, or did I miscategorize you completely at the beginning?
No, you actually nailed it right. It's the process of what it takes. To your question, Julian, as how do we get through into market and how do many companies prove it? You have to come to the physician market first. Once you have that platform, from our technology's perspective, we're working with some of the largest fabricators of garments, for instance, in the world, that go direct down into the sportswear and the lingerie wear, so that our technology will actually become ubiquitous to what you're buying into the market today. Just for your general wear, it'll just be that this month you're able to use it and start screening for the sake of whether or not your breast health is where it should be. So it is a complicated model, having to get the physicians in base, but then going out to the B2C model, Once you have that in place, and the referral comes back both from the physician as well as from the insurance company to ensure then that the woman is finding the earliest state of cancer. And the cost model, frankly, is going to be quite low at the end of the day, because we've got a huge market, and the cost of putting this into a normal garment is not high. And we're going to be charging from the case of per use over time in the cloud.
Fantastic. And so, what have you spoken to any of these sports apparel players and I guess garment manufacturers? And what's the response been?
We've had great responses, and we are now into our third year of a relationship with the largest actually direct to out of Shenzhen. Company is called Regina Miracle, actually. So Regina is a company that is great in doing the research, and they're also one of the largest suppliers for Victoria's Secret, for Nike, historically, for Adidas, and L brands. So we go top down inside of the fabric, but first we needed to do is to get a product out that actually could be proven through the medical arena.
Fantastic. Sounds very promising. Listen, I'm very conscious of time, and there are numerous more questions I could ask, but I want to give, I guess, to respect the time contract we've engaged in. So let me just thank all three of you for a fascinating discussion that only really scratches the surface of how you're leveraging technology to transform the delivery of healthcare. But it sounds like you're making fantastic progress despite the many headwinds that are facing us, and therefore that you need to negotiate on a day-to-day basis. But again, good luck with your respective endeavors. Thank you very much for being, members of the cohort and contributing, as well as helping us help the others in the ecosystem. We at Gale & Growth continue to be very excited about digital health and what it means to healthcare and to patients. So thank you, and wishing you all a good day.
Thank you so much, Julian.
Thanks,
Thank you for the
Julian.
questions. Take care.
Thank you.
Good job, Kevin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.